Hello, welcome to the morning news. Our top stories in Mexico. The government celebrated 25 years of the creation of the National Human Rights Commission. But it wasn't all joy, as the Ombudsman Luis Raúl González told Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto the country's governance and democracy are at risk.
He said this is due to the massive abuses by the police, the widespread practice of torture, among other serious human rights violations by security forces, as well as impunity. Peña Nieto evaded the topic and instead praised the existence of the CNDH, which according to analysts and activists has done nothing to improve conditions in a country marred by police repression, enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, and other human rights violations. And as the tense atmosphere of violence and disorder in Mexico continues, the country prepares for the elections. 9 electoral candidates have already been murdered. 12 others working with campaigns have also been killed. At least 4 states in southern Mexico have been embroiled in unrest. Protesters are calling for a boycott of the elections due to the corruption and insecurity. The president of Mexico's National Electoral Institute, Lorenzo Córdoba, has said there are polling stations that will not be able to be installed in Oaxaca and perhaps Guerrero, where there are calls for boycott. But he refused to ask security forces for help in light of a situation he said has never before been faced in Mexico.
We have not requested the assistance of the police because we consider that it is not convenient to militarize the elections. These protests have complicated our field of work.
Close to 2,000 observers will be present across the country, including former Costa Rican President Laura Chinchilla, who is representing the Organization for American States, as well as Guatemala Nobel Peace Prize winner Rigoberta Menchú.
We continue with our coverage in Mexico. Our correspondent Clayton Cano was in Oaxaca State, and he tells us of the actions that have been taken there to boycott the Santos midterm elections.
Here on the highway that goes to Oaxaca City, Maximina Ramirez tries to maintain a living. When asked about the Sunday's national elections, the indigenous Mixteca woman says the political class only provides empty promises.
The political party, whether it is one or the other, bring us the stars. Like a teenager when one promises the stars to a 15-year-old girl. And what happens? They are put aside and one is forgotten.
Ramirez fears that the direction and trend of current public policies will not favor her or the rest of the 25% of those living far below the poverty line in the state of Oaxaca.
It will be like before. My parents used to tell me that he who had money would be able to study, and those who didn't, wouldn't. I think the same is happening now. It is coming back.
Yet these public policies are not passed quietly. Members of the 75,000-strong Section 22 of the National Teachers Union have called a strike, organizing blockades, sit-ins, and toll booth takeovers as part of a strategy to boycott the elections and denounce the country's recent wave of structural neoliberal reforms.
The 11 reforms that have been passed are not the reality that the government is conveying of great advances. In fact, it is the opposite, bringing us great poverty and marginalization in our communities, along with the shortages in basic services.
The militant Oaxacan teachers also shut down the state's international airport, flexing their muscle against what they say are authoritarian and violent strategies employed by the authorities to quiet protest.
Others can now come and evict you from your home, and you can't say anything. And if you say something, here comes the police to beat you. And if you say something, here is the gun that kills. And if you say something, here is the person that will disappear you. This is the reality of our country.
Although the climate has been relatively calm and peaceful since the teachers and their supporters began their strike on Monday, they say they expect sharper and more violent responses to their actions as Election Day approaches. Clayton Cantela Sur, Oaxaca City.
The 37th round of Colombia's peace negotiations have ended in Havana. The FARC and the government peace delegations have agreed on the creation of a truth commission. Natalia Margarita has this report on the talks.
Which justice should be applied, or rather amnesty and pardon, in the case of political crimes.
Early this year, when the Historical Commission for the Conflict submitted a detailed report on the origins and complexities of Colombia's armed conflict, the necessity that all different actors bear responsibility for their role on the conflict and its victims became one of the most pressing issues.
A truth commission would attempt to clarify the dynamics, logic, and effects that this conflict has produced, that would be absolutely fundamental to establish the responsibilities, not just of the guerrillas, but also of the paramilitaries in the state, because all of them bear responsibility for crimes that have affected the civilian population.
The issue of victims has been the most widely discussed out of the 5-point negotiation agenda. Now the creation of the Truth Commission might give hope that the agreements regarding the victims of the conflict are moving forward. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
The government of Argentina revealed that the President Cristina Fernandez held talks with fugitive former U.S. spy agency contractor Edward Snowden. The meeting took place in April. The director of the ACLU Argentina, Anthony Romero, said Buenos Aires nor him believe Snowden is a criminal. He also praised Fernandez, attesting she was not concerned of the adverse reaction that meeting might have caused in Washington. And now to our roundup of world news.
We must emphasize that this shows the bravery, the courage, and the independence of President Kirchner to get this meeting with Edward Snowden.
Hackers breached the computer system of the U.S. government agency that collects personal information for federal workers. Officials say data of about 4 million current and foreign employees were hacked. The FBI has launched an investigation to arrest and put on trial those responsible. An explosion and ensuing massive flames at a petrol station in Ghana's capital Accra killed at least 200 people. They were there taking shelter from the massive floods caused by torrential rains. The explosion occurred Wednesday, but as the rescue efforts continue, the death toll continues to rise. Authorities in Myanmar moved around 400 Bangladeshi and Rohingya migrants who critics say they have been treated more like criminals than people seeking asylum from the countries where they face poverty, violence, and human rights abuses. Men were separated from women and children. They were crammed into warehouses. Most of them were shirtless and caked in fan film or dirt. In Munich, Germany, over 30,000 protesters rallied through the streets ahead of the Group of Seven summit due to take place in Bavaria this weekend. They are protesting inequality. Authorities deployed over 17,000 officers expecting unrest, which had never happened.
One major criticism is that the seven, not the most powerful countries in the world, but seven of the most economically and politically powerful countries in the world internally agree what they will do in the future. They coordinate their policies and try to force these policies onto other countries. So they try to increase their power to dominate the others.
Iran and 6 world powers resumed negotiations on its nuclear program, hurling to overcome remaining differences in order to meet the self-imposed June 30 deadline in an attempt to end a 12-year standoff. A framework accord was reached April 2nd, but several major disputes remain to be resolved, including access for UN nuclear inspectors to Iranian military sites. Many Middle Eastern nations are fiercely opposed to the agreement, fearing Iran will build nuclear weapons and use them against them.
The corruption scandal engulfed in FIFA continues to spread as new cases affecting the World Football Organization surface. The FIFA paid Ireland's Football Association $5 million to avoid a legal case over a controversial World Cup playoff defeat in 2009. This was confirmed by the World Soccer's governing body. Ireland were knocked out by France in a two-leg playoff to qualify for the 2010 South Africa tournament. The decisive goal in the second leg came after a handball by French striker Thierry Henry in extra time.
Well, it was a payment to the association.
But why was the payment?
Not to proceed with a legal case.
Oh, right.
Not to proceed with a legal case. And in there then decided to put in a confidentiality agreement where I can't talk about the amount involved.
Okay. More on these on our website, telesurtv.net/English. Thank you for watching and have a nice weekend.